Welcome to Urban Exegesis Studios. I'm your host, Dr. Derrick Colon, and I'm excited to have you here. This is the place where hip-hop culture meets faith, history, and community. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. To stay connected and to unlock exclusive content, please join channel membership. You can also find us across social media. On Facebook at Urban Exegesis, on Instagram at Urban Exegesis Studios, and on TikTok at Urban Exegesis Studios. Thank you for tuning in. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. What up, y'all? What up? What up? What up? Welcome to another episode of Urban Exegesis Studios. I am your host, Dr. Derrick Colon, and it is my pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching on the rewatch, let me encourage you to just kind of scroll. Well, you're already here. You don't need to scroll anywhere. So let me just wait for some people to get in. Let me see who's up in the comments already. Of course, the chat is in the building. Pastor Crespo, good evening, sir. Good evening. Good evening. Shout out to Pastor Crespo, who is a channel member. I want to thank you, sir, for becoming a channel member. Shout out to Pastor Crespo. Shout out to Hulk777, also a channel member. And so I want to thank you for being here. Let me shout out my man right here. My man Regular. My man Regular is in the building. And so, man, listen, just want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. If you're not a channel member, if you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, smash that like button, and join channel membership for exclusives. Let me just go ahead and see something really, really quick. Yeah, I'll do that another time. But welcome, man. Let me know. Can you hear me? Is the visual okay? Can you hear me? Working on making this thing look a lot more professional. We're working on lighting. We're working on, all of that. So let me know if you can hear me good and if you can see me good, if the quality is good. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Tonight, we're going on my graffiti days. This is the hip hop conversation, and we are talking about my graffiti journey. So we're going to have some images on the screen a little bit later. So just waiting for some people to get up in here. Let me put some mood music on in the background just to wait for some people to get up in here. And we're going to just put it right about 25. Let me know if that's good for the music. If the music is not being overpowered, you can still hear my voice, but the music is in the background. That's what we want. So once again, special shout out to my channel members. Go ahead and share this on your platforms. If you would do me the favor and go to your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, your Twitter, your X, wherever it is that you do your social medias, can you please share this right now? Let everybody know that we are live and direct tonight. So thank you for tuning in. We're going to have a great show. We're going to have a great show tonight. Tonight is all about my graph writing journey. We're going to talk about just graffiti history a little bit. We're not going to get too in depth. But we are going to talk a little bit about that. And yeah. So it's going to be good. Let's see what's over here. Is that the screen itself? Yeah, it must be the screen itself. I'm not sure. It's weird, but welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Wait for some people to get up in here. As people make their way in, thank you for tuning in. Once again, let everybody know that we are live on this Friday night. On this Friday night. Going to be sharing some images in a little while. We want to give some people some time to get up in the building. Shout out to everybody. The hip hop conversation. Let me go ahead and see if I can share. See if I can share some things while we're waiting. So while we're waiting, let me just put this on the screen and I'm going to be back. I'm just going to try and share some things here. Y'all just bear with me. Trying to find some images. That we can use for tonight. Let's see. Let's try and find some images for tonight. I might not be able to, but it's all good. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to lower this just a bit. Boom, 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 boom. Keep it about 20. Boom. Where it's not too much distracting. Well, once again, welcome to Urban Exegesis Studios. I am your host, Dr. Derrick Colon. I greet you in the words of Jesus Christ, grace and peace. And I wanted to do something that talked a little bit about each element that I was involved in. And I figured, why not start with the graffiti element? And so let's talk a little bit about my journey as a graffiti writer. So my journey really begins. Hold on one second. I don't know why that picture's there. There it is. Okay, my journey really begins right here. Hold on. There we go. That's what I wanted. So as you can see, that's when my journey begins. My journey begins in the Bronx. Some consider it the South Bronx area. And I'll get back to that picture in a minute. And I would say that I was starting to write graffiti probably around the early 80s, right? I'm a young teenager at this point, but I wanted to be known that I was exposed. In fact, that music has really distracted me, so I'm gonna just remove it. I'm gonna just remove it. Um, I was exposed to the graffiti writing movement living in New York City, and so when I lived in New York City, um, in the 70s. I'm seeing walls, I'm seeing trains, the insides, all tagged up. I didn't know what it was called back then. I just knew that there were a lot of people that were writing their names, and I was fascinated by the idea that how didn't these people get caught? Because they put their name on here. At that point, I wasn't aware that people were coming at nighttime and sneaking into the train yards and going into the cars. I wasn't aware of that at that time. I was too young, but I was seeing this. We speak about that schoolyard, 28 schoolyard. I remember seeing graffiti there, really early styles of graffiti in that schoolyard. And again, in my block, in my building, all of that, right? When I moved away to Rochester, when I moved to Rochester, New York, there was, of course, writing on walls. This was just like murals, regular murals. This was not graffiti with style. It wasn't really a bombing or writing movement there, but you did see regular graffiti up on the walls. People would they would take paintbrushes and put them in paint, and they would write their names. No style, just and you would see murals as well. Around 1981, 82. I happened to be watching um, looking at a magazine, actually. I was looking at a magazine, and in the magazine, it was talking about the graffiti movement in New York City. And it was mentioning graffiti crews like CIA. Um, and I'm not really sure I remember anybody else, but they were talking about this movement. Now, as I'm going back and forth from Rochester to New York City, now I'm older now. So I'm starting to sort of see what's going on. I see that names are being tagged with style. And so I was immediately attracted to the writing movement. And the first name that I actually took on to start writing my name anywhere, whether it was on my desk in school, whether it was on a wall um, in the bathroom, was I was writing Lil Ski, Lilski, Lil Ski, and that was the tag that I came up with. Right. Let me go ahead. I'm going to create a little banner. I'm going to just title it. These were my tags, and these were my tags. My first tag was Lil Ski, and then it went to the following, and I'll get to those in a minute. I'll get to those in a minute. And then 167. So let's see. Okay. And so these are the names these were my tags. My first tag was, again, the early 80s, was Lil Ski. And I really wasn't out bombing then because I still hadn't really understood the movement yet. But I was writing this around, right? Little places, right? And I was a toy. I was a real toy at the beginning. Um, But, these were the names. And then I started to write the name Soul. Now, this is when I started to get really serious about graffiti, about writing, right? And I started to write Soul, Soul. And this was mainly in Rochester. And when I went back and forth to New York, I was also getting up. And we'll talk about my New York story in a little bit. But in Rochester, I was mainly writing soul. And I want to bring this up right here. As you can see, let me hide this. So, right here, if you could see my cursor, that was my tag. That was my tag. I used to write soul. And I didn't write Soul BX, but I used to write Soul. So that was my tag, as you can see. And one of the funny things is, as I was writing Soul, I started to really get serious, and I started to actually run into a lot of writers from New York that were in Rochester. So I was going up, I was getting up, right? And I started to, when I went to Franklin, I started to see at this point, now I'm able to tell that's a New York writer because you could tell the style, right? And so there was I don't even remember the person's name, but there was a writer that I used to see and in the school. And I wasn't going over I wasn't going over him. I was just writing my name next to him. And eventually, the one thing with graffiti was that was very secretive. You really didn't let people know who you were. And so he didn't know who I was. I didn't know who he was until one day I just so happened, he so happened to catch me writing next to his name. And I was writing Soul. And so he introduces himself. And again, I don't even remember his name. So, it started for me there, right? And as I'm going back and forth to New York, to the Bronx, now I'm starting to pay attention to writers. Now I'm starting to pay attention. In fact, what I would do is I would go to I would just go and I would hop the turnstile in the train station, and I would just go sit on the platform, and I would just sit there just to watch trains go by so I could see the throw ups and the pieces. And this is, again, early. This is about 83 when I'm starting to kind of go there for the summer. This wasn't when I was going back and forth earlier than that. When I'm there for the summer, now I'm starting to pay attention. And I'm starting to understand this movement, that this subculture within the culture. Okay. Now there are those who would say that graffiti, the writing movement, is not part of hip hop. It became part of hip hop later. I happen to disagree with that. I disagree with that 100%. I think that everybody that was a writer ended up becoming part of hip hop culture. Therefore, it was part of hip hop culture. It's just the same way that you had early people who would become part of hip hop culture who were not part of it, but were DJing. Right. So Herc is DJing early. Bambaataa is DJing early. They're just just playing records until they start to take on the culture. And I say the same thing for graffiti writing. So anyway, so I'm in New York and I'm watching. My nephew is also tagging, and I started to hang out with some writers. And I remember there was a writer that I used to hang out with. There was a couple of writers on the block, so we used to hang on Valentine Avenue, right around 196, 197th in the Grand Concourse in Valentine, right? It was right up the street from Poe Park was right up the street. And this is the area where you would find Little Charlie Chase, you would find the Ballbusters, you would find HBO, you would find Mastermind. They were all around there. And this is the era where they're wearing beads with nameplates, and you would find some Zulus, right? So there was a writer that lived in the building on the block we used to hang out at, and his name was Sobe. He wrote Sobe, Sobe. Some people called him Sobe. And so Sobe was a writer, and he was doing airbrushing and shirts, and he would go out bombing. He would go out tagging. So there will be times where I would tag along, right? Again, just watching. And he would kind of give me a marker, and I would get my little name up, little spots. I wasn't doing what he was doing. This dude was bombing. And there was another writer that hung with us directly, and his name was Julio. Julio used to write Zank, Zank. And Julio was a ball buster. He was a Dominican kid. And he was a member of Tracy 168's Wild Style. Okay, he was a member of the crew Wild Style, Tracy 168. In fact, let me see if I can find an image of that. Give me 1 second. Let me try and find an image of Tracy 168 and Wild Style, and you could see what exactly I'm talking about. There is an image on online, and I'm going to find that. I want to find that because I think it's important to show you Tracy, because Julio was hanging with Tracy. He was part of Wild Style. He was part of that crew, and everybody knew that crew, right? There would be from time to time, we would see Tracy walking around. Tracy was always around in the neighborhood, and we would see Tracy. And let me see if I can find that Wild Style image with him and Wild Style on it. If not, I'm going to show you another image that I think is very interesting. And I have a story behind that image because Tracy was famous for this. Let me see if I can find it. And so far, I cannot find it, but I am going to bring up another one, another picture, but I'm going to save these. I'm going to save these to, hold on 1 second. And it's not allowing me to do that. So I'm going to just pass on that. Y'all forgive me. Y'all just bear with me. I'm trying to find some history here, and I can't find the image. Wouldn't you know it? When you need it, you can't find it. So I'm going to use this other image that I think is very, very important, because Tracy was very much known for this image. And let's see, let me get the real good image of it. And let's see. Yes. We'll use this one. And I don't know why it's not allowing me to save it to my pictures. So we're going to see why it's not allowing me. Anyway, I can't save it to my pictures. It's not allowing me to, but I think I can find another image anyway. So let's get back to what we're talking about. So there is an image of Tracy that I want to talk about, and I'm going to find that. I got to find that. Y'all got to just bear with me. I'm going to try and find that. And I just was looking at it the other day. Let me find that for you. Here it is right here. Okay, I'm going to bring it up. Boom. I'm going to just drop it in here. And this is an image of Tracy 168. And you could see in the image, it's Wild Style is a way of life. And if you notice that, you see it says Tracy 168 WS, Wild Style. You see that right here. But if you notice this character right here, I got to tell you an interesting story about this character. So again, this is around 1983. I'm hanging out with Zank, who's part of Wild Style. He's part of that crew. and he would go bombing as well. I used to also run with a kid. We would all just go out, right? And there was a kid named May 2, May 2, and he would go out and he would just go out with his pilot. He would carry pilots on him, and we would just go into the train stations, and he would just just bomb. Me, my nephew, him, and his girlfriend, and we just bombing, right? So one day we're going. It's the summer of '83, and we're going to what's known as the Villa Feast. Let me see if I can put this right here. I want to see something. It's going to make me remove it. I don't want to remove it. I don't want to remove it. I want to keep it. I want to keep myself in there. Anyway, there's a place called the Villa Feast in the Bronx. If anybody knows about the Villa Feast, you know the Bronx and the Villa Feast. And so Tracy 168 was at the Villa Feast. And he was at the Villa Feast, and he was doing t-shirts at the Villa Feast. And so the Villa Feast, a lot of people are there. Everybody's just hanging out. And we rolled up to Tracy, and he was doing shirts for people. And he turned to me. For some odd reason, he turned to me and he asked me, "You want to get a shirt?" And I was like, "I ain't got no money." I don't remember how I said it, but I just said, I don't have any money. And he said, "This one's on me." And he just started to do his thing. And what he did on a shirt was this character's face right here. This was a famous character from Tracy 168. So he did this character's face right here. And underneath the face, he wrote Lil Ski, right? And that was when I was tagging Lil Ski. And so he wrote Lil Ski. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I wish I had that shirt today. I don't know what happened to that shirt. Got rid of that shirt, right? I don't know what happened to that shirt. But I wish I had that shirt today. Yeah, and we could talk about cornbread and taki. We're talking about graffiti tonight, so we could definitely talk about that. But I wish I had that shirt today. So anyway, as I'm going back and forth to Rochester, I take on the name Soul, and I start to write Soul, Soul. And this is what I was writing. I was writing Soul, and you can see the moniker right here, Soul. And I was writing that everywhere. Everywhere I was writing it. Now at this point, I am I'm hold on one second, guys. At this point, I'm writing, and now I'm starting to go out, and I'm starting to really, really bomb. I'm starting to bomb. I was famous for carrying Pentels, white Pentels. If you remember the Pentels, you would shake the Pentels, and they would shake like a spray can. They had a little ball in them. And so you would shake the Pentels. So I would carry a white Pentel or a silver Pentel. I always carried a pilot on me all the time. And I was starting to always carry a bag with a spray can in it, because everywhere I went, I was writing Soul. So I started to get up. There was a kid that ended up in New Jersey, from Paterson, New Jersey. His name was George. Now, George was a graph writer. George was a writer in Paterson. I don't even remember what he wrote, right? But George was bad. Puerto Rican kid from Paterson. And me and him would start going out bombing. Me and him would go out bombing. We would hang out, and we would leave about 3 o'clock in the morning to go out bombing, right? And he would be the lookout, and then I would be the lookout. We have a couple of guys with us, and we're just so now I'm starting to do throw ups, and I'm continuing to do tags. I was a motion writer. I never did pieces. Right? So I'm doing throw ups and I'm doing motion tags. So George is with me, and another kid from New Jersey ended up in Rochester who went by the name of Tue, and he used to tag. Now this dude was doing pieces. He was doing jackets, lead jackets with pieces on the back. He was doing pants. This dude was very talented, right? So I was heavy. I was knee deep into the graffiti writing movement. My friend, one of my closest friends, he went by the name of DK. And DK is very interesting because DK was working at a place in Rochester called All Day Sunday. They moved it from the top floor to the bottom floor. And there was a gentleman that was going to Brockport College, I believe. And he was a graffiti writer from New York, and he went by the name of Pose 2. Pose 2, the graffiti writer. I'm going to find his picture. I got to find his picture, y'all. So I'm going to find his picture, and let me find Pose 2's picture so you could see Pose 2. Let me just find this. This is important. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I got him. Here we go. And so Pose 2, this is Pose. And I don't understand why it's not allowing me to save this to my it's not allowing me to save it. It was before. Maybe there's just not enough room to save it. So I'm going to just do this. I'm going to leave it up here. I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to just share my screen. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to go like this, and I'm going to bring this up. So this is Pose 2 right here. Pose used to work in All Day Sunday, and he was a dope graffiti writer. He was doing jackets in All Day Sunday in Rochester. So Pose was really, really, really nice with it. And he started to teach DK, my man Eddie, how to write. So they formed a graffiti crew called the Gas Company, the Ghetto All Stars Company. And so they started going out bombing, and I was bombing with them, and we were just bombing. They exceeded me. Eddie exceeded me because I wasn't doing pieces. Eddie started doing pieces. I was just on my motion writing tip. That's all I was doing. I was doing throw ups and I was doing motion writing. Now I go back for 84 summer, still writing, going to visit my cousin in the Lower East Side. He lived in the Smith Projects, and he was a writer, right? He was a graph writer, and my cousin used to write DA. Now my cousin, I never went into the layups, into the yards. I didn't do that. I was just outside with it, right? Whether it was inside hallways or it was on handball courts or wherever I could write, but I wasn't going in them yards. My cousin, on the other hand, was going into the yards in Manhattan, right? As far as I'm concerned, and I'm a Bronx dude, I think Manhattan writers were better than Bronx writers. There are Brooklyn writers who would say that, but I think Manhattan writers, because I think Manhattan just had some of the best throw ups. Tell me what you think about that in the comments. But so we had these. He was going into the yards. He was going down into the grates. He was opening up the grate. That's where you see the smoke coming up in the street. And he was going down there. He was part of a crew that called themselves the Hot Team, HOT team. And it stood for two things, hell on trains or holding off toys. And he was part of a pretty big crew. In fact, My cousin got into a little mini graffiti war. Now, if you know anything about graph, you know that, and I'll tell you some more stories in Rochester. But and this is when Rochester really starts to get a bombing movement going. But if you know anything about graph, when people went down into them tunnels, when they went into the layups, into the yards, you would have people in there with sticks, some with guns, some with knives, and they were going in there. Other writing crews were going there to stick up people for their paint, right? And so it was very dangerous. Listen, writing was if you went over somebody, that was a dangerous thing to do because this was and you see a lot of this in that famous, I know I wanted to show this, you see a lot of this in the famous documentary called Style Wars. Right, this is a brother right here. He is in the yards, and Style Wars really shows you. It really shows you the beefs in the graffiti wars, the graffiti turf wars between Cap. Cap was just going over everybody, right? If you haven't watched Star Wars, go back and watch Star Wars, right? So just a great great movie. And so the graffiti wars were heavy. My cousin was in a mini graffiti war with a kid by the name of FR. Now, FR was writing, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on the 6th line. If I'm not mistaken. And so I go back, summer's over, I go back to Rochester. I'm still writing. I'm going to get back to the graffiti war with FR. So I'm still writing in Rochester, and in Rochester they had these tunnels. Now, they didn't have subways in Rochester, but they had these tunnels where all the old freight trains would go through. So we were going down there and we were bombing, opposed to all of us. We were going all down there and bombing and writing. The graffiti wars were heavy even there, that people were going over people. So if you go to Rochester today, Rochester is some of the great graffiti writers are in Rochester. Rochester is known for graffiti writing, but it wasn't when I was there, right? So there was a few of us that's kind of got the ball rolling. I'm not saying I started graffiti there. I'm saying I was one of the ones who started the bombing movement in Rochester. But there was a war there too. There were people going over each other. So I started to get up so much around the city, right? In my area, Clinton Avenue, Franklin High School, as many places as I could get up. And I started to write the word king over soul. So people started to call me King Soul, right? Now, I know those are writers. They're going to be writers that quote from Star Wars, where this is the kid right here who actually makes this statement in Star Wars. And he says, you can't call yourself an all-out king if you are just doing throw-ups everywhere. You have to do insides, outsides, top to bottoms, pieces, throw-ups, tags, everything. Well, I'm not of that opinion, right? I'm of the opinion like Cap. It's about getting up. And so I was up. So remember, I'm doing throw-ups and I'm doing motion tags. My throw-up was either the full soul or it was just SL, right? For those of you that don't know what a throw-up is just a quickie, boom, and a fill-in and an outline, right? Real quick. I was using fat caps um, fat caps for the fill-ins, and doing that. So anyway, I was up, so everybody started to call me King Soul, right? And I would love to know if any of my tags are still in Rochester today. I don't know, but I would love to know if any of my tags are still up there. Now, 85, I go back with the intention of moving back to New York City. And we'll get to the rest of the graffiti stuff. I'm not even looking at the chat. I just want to tell the story, and then I'll get into the chat. And I'll get into some of the comments, some of the controversy. It's all good. When I go back, again, I'm back on the block on Valentine Avenue. We're hanging out. And there's some writers that we're seeing. There's Little John. Little John was everywhere. Lil John, he was everywhere. He was all on Valentine. He was everywhere. It's at this point that you're seeing PJ. Now, PJ, and somebody who knows this, please help me right here. I'm not sure if I remember if PJ wrote his name, PJ, on the end of every car or on the beginning of every car. But on every car, on a certain line, and I want to say it was, I don't remember what line it was. I don't know if it was the 4 or the 6. I don't remember. It might not have been any of them. But he would write PJ, and he had a war going on with a couple of people. So this was something you see all the time. Now, eventually, because I get in trouble, I end up moving with my aunt to the Lower East Side. Now, this is 85. And I moved with my aunt to the Lower East Side. And I moved to the Smith Projects. And it's in the Smith Projects. I'm going to see if this is going to help. Let me just see something. I'm going to remove from here. I'm going to remove something to see if I make room for something else. So it's in the Lower East Side that I'm on. I'm on the Lower East Side. And there's a picture that I want to find for you to give you an idea. This is a beautiful thing to give you an idea of who's around the Lower East Side. Let me just see. Yeah, so we got one. Man, this is not allowing me to save it anymore. Okay. Anyway, let me see. Save image as. Okay. So we got this one. So I'm going to bring this up. Let me go back to the studio. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to show you an image. And it's this. Let me see if I can make this image bigger. Let me see if I can make it bigger. And we're going to go here. It's not letting me show it. Okay, so we'll go back. But right here, you see this Lee piece. Okay, this Lee piece is a piece. This Lee piece right here, if you could see it, this Lee piece was a piece that wasn't far from the Smith Projects. I would walk by that piece all the time. It was a famous piece. That's the Lee piece with the Howard the Duck or the Donald Duck coming out of the garbage can. I would see that all the time. And then you had the other piece, and this was also a famous piece that we had. And this was the Lee piece with the lion. This was not far from where we were. Okay, so we would pass this all the time, right? Going back and forth. I saw this in real time, right? This is 85. I'm around there. But also there's a famous piece that, oh, this is a bigger one. Let me see. Okay, yeah, these are good right here. So these two right here. Let me see. Let me get out of here. Let me get out of here. I got to bring this one up because this one is better. So I'm gonna stop the screen. I'm gonna present my screen again, and we're gonna go here. And now we're gonna share this. Okay, here we go. So these are the two pieces that I would see all the time when I moved to my aunt's house in the Lower East Side, the Smith Projects, is these two Lee pieces. Well, Lee Quinones actually lived in the Smith Projects. I never saw him. I never saw him, but this is what I was told. Remember, my cousin is a graffiti writer. There's graffiti crews all in the Smith. And so they told us, yeah, Lee lives here. But also, let me bring this up again. Let me bring this up. So let's go back to that. So that's a piece there. And there is a fair, it is right here, right? This is the piece. Now, when you look at this, this is that piece. Let's see, can I make this one by itself? Yeah. Now, in the movie Wild Style, it said graffiti 1990, right? So they redid it. But this was the piece that you saw in the movie Wild Style. And again, I would pass that. When I saw it, when I saw the piece, actually when I saw the piece, this was after Wild Style, it was already like faded and the paint was chipping off of it. But these are the kind of things I'm seeing. So now back to the story with my cousin DA and his graffiti war with FR. So FR started going over my cousin's throw ups. My cousin was just doing throw ups, DA on cars. And I was going in there with him. I wasn't bombing, but I was going in there with him at this time. And he starts to notice FR going over him. Now, I wasn't at this confrontation. My cousin was buying fireworks in Chinatown. Smith Projects, Chinatown is right there. My cousin was buying fireworks. And somebody tells him, yo, there's FR. Again, remember, in the graffiti world, you might know somebody, you might not know. But somebody knew who FR was, and my cousin rolled up on FR. And he's like, he did it sneaky. He's like, yo, you write FR? He's like, yeah. And they got into it. Right? This is how serious the graffiti writing movement was. Let's go back. Let me show you some pieces, some more pieces from. Let's see if we can see some more Lee pieces. This is Lee. Yeah, he got into some real extravagant stuff. But anyway, you get the point, right? So that was my world, right? I was writing from, again, the early 80s, again, tags and throw ups. Okay. Hanging with some graffiti writers. Majority of my graffiti was in Rochester, where I became king. I was King Soul, right? I wasn't doing pieces. I was doing throw ups and I was doing tags. And mainly my throw ups and tags were everywhere. And everybody knew King Soul, right? So, that's my graffiti story. I love graffiti. I've been in love with graffiti. A great book that I would encourage anybody to check out is this book right here, Martha Cooper, The Hip Hop Files. And this really goes through hip hop, the photographs, but the graffiti in this book, the graffiti section of this book is absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, the graffiti section of that book. And of course, there's other books. Subway Art is a great book that, you could check out. Let me see if I can find some images from Subway Art, Henry Chalfant, and I didn't even spell that right, but anyway, you get the point. So like this is one of the books right here. Let me go ahead and share that screen. Share. And yeah, so then we're going to share that screen. Let me see how that looks. And where is it? And we're going to Screen layout. Okay, so we're gonna go through some of these images. This is Subway Art. Martha Cooper actually and Henry Chalfant. We see some phenomenal. This is probably the Bible of graffiti art, right? This is when Henry was, really doing his thing when it came to just getting these pieces and documenting these pieces that have long been gone. He put them in pictures. Amazing. Amazing. Here's some Lee stuff. Here's some Lee stuff. This is some old stuff right here. Let's see. Let's see if we could make that bigger. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but you get the point. You get the point. But yeah, so these are some some images that we had from those. So those books are crazy, right? But that was my graffiti story in a nutshell, right? I wrote Lil Ski, Soul, King Soul, and then I started to write because people started to know me. King Soul, King Soul, King Soul. And I said, man, I want to come up with another moniker that nobody knows who it is. And I started to tag Bay 167. And I made sure that I did not tell anybody that it was me. I just made believe. In fact, I was with my friend George Jorge, who was a writer from Jersey that I was telling you about. And I remember we were somewhere. We were in Midtown Plaza. That's where we were. And I went to the bathroom. Took out my pilot that I always carry with me. I carry the Pentel and the pilot. I took a Pentel. I wrote Bay 167. And with the pilot, I wrote Bay 167. And I left the bathroom, went outside. He went into the bathroom. He came out the bathroom and he tells me, yo, D, there's a new writer. I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? There's a new writer. Just saw his tag, Bay 167. I'm like, what? Really? Word. Okay. I never told him it was me. I just kept it up. And I continued writing till about 1985, 86. I remember during my time of writing, I am also a B-boy, and around 84, I start to MC. So I'm doing these things kind of simultaneously, interchangeably. As I'm leaving one, I'm more into the other. And I'll do a whole B-boy section of my history as a B-boy in another segment. And then I'll do a whole history of me as an MC in another segment with flyers and all that. But that was my little history of me as a graffiti writer. I love graffiti writing. I think let me give you my top 5 graph writers. Let's see my top 5. Give me your top 5 graph writers. My top 5 graph writers. Here they are. I would have to say Lee Quinones. Lee. I would have to say Dondi. I would have to say Tracy 168. That's 3. I would have to say One-Armed Case. That's 4. I'd have to say Scene. I'm going to keep going. I have to say Zephyr. I'd have to say Futura. There's so many now these were the dudes that really got on. But just like in hip hop overall, there were so many dope writers and so many crews across the city. Writing was a movement that was citywide. It was across the city. Okay, let's look at something real quick. Let me do something real quick. We're gonna go here. We're gonna go here, and we're gonna go to we're going to go to, so I'm going to take you here, and we're going to go to the writer's bench, and we're going to share my screen, and I hope you could see this. Let me get myself off the screen. Let me take myself off the screen. Let me make this full screen. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try and just zoom in. There's some people I want you to notice. These are like the writers, right? Let's see. We're going to find somebody I want you to see. Of course, we got Ramel Z. Ramel Z is here. Let's go back. I want you to see somebody. Where is it? You gotta be kidding me. Wait a minute. Where is it? I'm looking for somebody. It is right here. We got Schick. All right, so this is, let me see if I can zoom in on this. It's not letting me. Yes, it is. Okay. Come on. So this is, we're gonna zoom in, and we're gonna try and go right here. And Schick founded a crew in 1975. Schick was writing, this is Mr. Schick from the Mean Machine. Schick was a graffiti writer starting in 1971, and Schick founded a group called Salsa in 1975 with members Schick 1, Chrome 100, Game 5, FTD 56, and Packs. The crew was most active during the mid to late 70s. Most members were from the Bronx. They wrote all city, but were particularly effective on the 1 and the 4 lines in the IRT division. Prominent members were Schick, Chrome 100, Wasp 1, FTD 56, Oz 109, Bluebeard 183, Lewis 176, Wiz 3, Pax, Shadow. Stop right there. Shadow, very important. Let me talk to you for a minute. Shadow was part of Salsa, Schick's crew. Shadow was Spike Lee's brother. Shadow was a graffiti writer. This is why Spike Lee can say that hip hop culture was from blacks and Puerto Ricans. Some say, well, how would Spike know that? His brother Shadow, who was a graffiti writer. When Shadow died, the graffiti writer community went to that funeral. So Shadow is Spike Lee's brother, part of that crew called Schick. Let me bring this back up again. See if you can, I hope you can see this, right? Shadow and the rest of these names, right? So these are, some of the crews that we, so here's the crews. Now we got the crews, all these different, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. But, just to give you some, the graffiti writing movement, let's make no mistake about it. The graffiti writing movement was started in Manhattan. Many writers were in the Bronx, but really, names and street numbers. These are Spanish kids, Puerto Rican kids, Dominican kids, Latino kids, and white boys. Some of the baddest graffiti writers that you saw were white boys. You didn't even know they were writers. Some of the baddest writers are white boys, right? But this was predominantly, in its inception, predominantly white and Latino kids, and then black kids. Okay, so again, a multicultural thing. But graffiti writing is, again, it was a subculture within a subculture. It was its own subculture. It had its own rules. It had its own, format. It was just its own thing, right? And you know how people got paint. They would go in with their trench coats and make pockets and rack up on paint and all that. But that's my little graffiti writing story. And I was always fascinated. I still am. I still love graffiti. I still love watching movies about graffiti. Let's go to the chat. Man, there's so many things that I'm missing. I'm gonna go all the way back up, man. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's see who's saying what in the chat. Let's see who saying what in the chat about graffiti. Let me know in the chat. Do you feel that graffiti writing should be part of hip hop culture? Let me know in the chat. Let me know what you think. Let me hear your thoughts. Let me hear your thoughts on that. Do you think that graffiti writing should be part of hip hop culture? Let's see what the chat's saying about um about that. Let me see who's saying what. Yeah, I like this one right here. So Hebrew Thug, shout out to Hebrew Thug. He says 1970 Phase 2 New York City graffiti artist is recognized as the originator of the bubble letter style that gained popularity among all up and coming graffiti writers, meaning throw ups. All right, shout out to Phase 2. Shout out to Lonnie. Shout out to Lonnie. Shout out to Lonnie. Shout out to Lonnie. Shout out to Pro for One, Dream, Totem, Case, Doze, Twist. Yes, if you know Doze from Rocksteady Crew, Doze was a dope graffiti writer. Doze was a dope graffiti writer. Okay. Got married. Which scene? There was two scenes. I'm talking about scene, Mad Scene, the white boy scene with the long hair, the one that's in Star Wars scene. Okay. Let's see. See, and I don't know if you know this, but also, Kool Herc was a graffiti writer. He hung with graffiti writers. I think he wrote Clyde as Cool. I believe that's what he wrote. Clyde as Cool. Let's see. Let's see what the people are saying up in the chat. Let's see what the people are saying up in the chat. Let's see. Let's see. So Akeem is in here. He said, remember, you said Graph comes in by way of flyers. Ooh, Graph. Oh, you're talking about Graph comes into hip hop by way of flyers. Yeah. So, well, let's examine that. Let's even examine that. Akeem, I'm glad you're here. Let's even examine that. So I'm not sure if you're a writer. If you were a writer, Akeem, I was. So I'm not sure if you were. But anyway, let's even examine that. When we look at the flyers, the hip hop flyers, which were done by a few graffiti writers. So a lot of people might not know this. A Straight Man, Lava 1 and 2, a Black Spade, was doing early hip hop flyers. He was a graffiti writer. Okay. Obviously, we have Phase 2. Now, they say Buddy Esquire was a graffiti writer. I don't know that. I don't know that. He might have been. So don't quote me. I don't know that. What I'm saying is he was if he was doing flyers. But if you notice the flyers that they did, especially Phase 2 and Buddy Esquire, you never really see graffiti on the flyers. This is really desktop publishing. There are some flyers that have graffiti in them. But when you look at the typical flyers, let's see if we can find some some flyers. Let me bring up some flyers from my images and my photos, and let's just look at some flyers, and let's see if we can say these are. So here's a flyer. I'm gonna bring up a couple of flyers. Here's a flyer right here. And let me take Hakeem off. No offense, Hakeem, but let me just look at this. Right. Let me grab that off. Let me hide that. So here's a flyer. This is a handwritten flyer, right? This is from Atmosphere by Scales. We see Grandmaster Flash, Disco B. This is a hip hop flyer. Absolutely no sneakers, though. You notice that, right? That's hilarious to me. Let's find another flyer. Let's see. We're gonna find another flyer. And now, don't get me wrong, there were flyers that had graffiti on them. But most of the flyers that we see from these flyer collections, you don't see graffiti. It's really just regular desktop publishing. But graffiti writers did these flyers, and I'm having a hard time finding where all my flyers went. Give me a minute, y'all. Okay, give me a minute. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. Let me scroll down. In the meantime, talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves. This is good. I'm having a good time. And I'm not finding my flyer collection. Let me see where that would be. Let's see. Okay, we'll do it a different way. Let me see. We're going to do it a different way. Let me go in here, and I'm going to go to Google. Go to Google Drive. Let me see if I can bring up my Google Drive. And yes. And here we go. Let me see if I can bring it up. My drive. And nope, that's not mine. That's something else. Y'all bear with me, y'all. Y'all bear with me. Y'all bear with me. I'm trying to find these flyers. So this is not my Google Drive. It's not the right one. We're gonna. No, it should be the right one. Okay, hold on, y'all. Hold on, y'all. Y'all talk amongst yourselves. Let me find this. I gotta find this. Where is this? Huh. That's funny. It's funny that I can't find it. So let me see my drive. That's because it's in another drive. Okay, let me sign out. Let me sign back in. Use another account. Let's see if it's. Let's see if it's this one. Y'all bear with me. Y'all bear with me. Let's see if it's that one. And let's see. Yeah, come on, come on, come on. And okay. I am not sure where this is, but I had a whole set of flyers that are not there in my Google Drive. So anyway, we're just gonna forget about that right now. That's all good. We keep going. We keep going. But anyway, when you look at the flyers, you you don't see real graffiti writing. So I'm not sure if that answered the question with Akeem, but okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Akeem says, remember, that's what I told you. Yeah, and you were right. And you were right. Because the common narrative is, and I had to speak to my man about this, and we had a long conversation about this, about the fact that because the graffiti writers were the ones doing flyers, yet there's not really graffiti on the flyers. So how is graffiti? I get what you're saying. So how is graffiti part of hip hop? I would say graffiti is part of hip hop because many people that would be involved with hip hop's culture were graffiti writers, not necessarily because of the flyers. And then you did have some flyers that graffiti writers did in a graffiti style. But for me, I believe that it is the art of the culture, right? So when you saw graffiti writers at jams, you knew graffiti writers when they showed up to jams because their hands were all painted up. You knew they just came back from bombing, whatever the case may be. But I'm with you. I would not. I would have to change my stance. I would not say that because Phase Two was a graffiti writer and he did flyers that made the graffiti come into hip hop. I don't even know if that was Bambata's whole idea behind this, to be honest with you. I just say graffiti writers were coming to jams. They were part of jams. They were bringing black books to the jams. And these are people who, if you listen to Lava 1 and 2, if you listen to graffiti writers, they were showing up to jams with black books. When I was a graffiti writer, I had a black book. We used to show up to the jams with our black books in our backpacks, right? We weren't there to bomb, but we would show up because other writers would show up and we were tagging in each other's things. It just goes with the culture. It's just part of the culture. That's my 2 cents when it comes to that. That's my 2 cents. And yeah, shout out to Akeem. Yeah. So see, there's always room for correction. Always room for correction. But I still hold that graffiti, the writing movement, is part of hip hop's culture because of the fact that I just mentioned. So yeah, I totally do that. Hebrew Thug says this. He says graffiti was on a lot of flyers, depending if the DJ was a writer or was familiar with graffiti he threw up with in the hood. Yeah. Again, you do see graffiti on flyers. But when you look, if you look at the video that I did on the flyers from 72 to 84, I mean, the majority of them are not graffiti flyers. They don't have graffiti style letters. It's desktop publishing. The majority of them. You had a few that had it, but the majority of them did not. So that's important. That's important. Hakeem says, when you write your book, give me credit. Give me credit. Yeah, and I know, Hakeem, you've been I saw your video with on Cool Earl, and I saw the Cool Earl video, so I know that it's all good, bro. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. Let me see. Akeem says, test what pilot ink color is the best. To me, to me, my favorite colors for pilots were black, blue, and red. My favorite colors for Pentels that you shake was silver. That was my favorite. And then let's not talk about the unis, right? So the unis was the handmade things, right? You take the underarm deodorant, get that thing out of there, right? You tape the bottom. We used to use um, duct tape, tape the bottom real tight. Then we would get ink. We would get an eraser from the school. We would rip the eraser. We would fold it in. We would stick it inside to create a tip, right? But before we put the tip on, we would take the ink and put the ink in. Then we would put the tip on and we would cover it. And we would there were people that would shake it. I never shook it. We didn't want to shake it. I just let it sort of just drip in. And then I would open it carefully and it would automatically drip. And that's where you had those thick letters with the uni markers. And then the fat caps. My favorite spray paint, my favorite spray cans, my favorite brand was Rust-Oleum, Red Devil. And then later on, years later on, you had the Montana paints, which Montana paints are nice. But the Rust-Oleum and the Red Devil, those were my favorites. Those were my favorites. He said, nah, pick one color. Pilot, you named almost all. For me, I would probably say, for me, black. Black is my color. Black is my color. What about you? What was your color? What was your color? I keep trying to trap you to say black. Black was my color. I like the black. I like the black marker. I like the black marker. But yeah, man. Anybody else got some graph stories as we start to wrap this up? We've been on here for a minute, but that was my graph story. I think you I think you got the gist of it. Loved graffiti, still love graffiti. Was a writer, did my thing, moved on. In fact, when I write, it's funny when I write in class on the whiteboards in school when I'm teaching my kids, I can't help it because you got them nice, what do you call them? The dry erase markers, right? They're real smooth, and then the dry erase board is so smooth. I start writing my lessons and my directions in graffiti letters without even realizing I'm doing it. And kids are like, what is that letter? What did you write there? What is that? So I got to kind of calm it down and get back to it. But so our next conversation that I want to do is the hip hop conversation. The next conversation, I want to take you through my B-boy experience. Me as a B-boy, who inspired me as a B-boy, who were the first B-boys I saw, all of that. My B-boy, I was a B-boy. And then I want to get into my MC experience with visuals, with flyers, all that. We'll get into all that. We'll get into all that. So I hope you enjoyed the lesson tonight. Akeem says, black is the one that won't fade. Ha 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 ha. Akeem, what did you write? Were you a writer? What you write? Tell me what you write. Nah, we'll do that. I promise we'll do that when we get to my history as an MC. But Akeem, real quick, what was your moniker? What was you tagging? Of course I was. What was you writing? What was your tag? And then Akeem, who's your top five? Who's your top five? Who was your top five graph writers? Let's end it with that. What did you write? I'm the real Zorro type guy. Yeah. Okay. I get you. I get you. He don't want nobody to know what he wrote. I get it. Respect. Who's your top five? Real quick, your top five graph writers. Who's your top five? And let me ask you, did you go to the layups? Did you go to the yards? Were you, I don't know if you're from New York. I don't know where you're from. Where were you writing at? What all of that. Want to exchange graffiti stories. I named five, not top though. Just marker tags. Okay, so you just did marker tags. Okay, just marker tags. I named five. I named five, not top though. Oh, I didn't. I didn't even see. I missed it. I said, let me see if I go back. I missed it. I didn't know who you. I didn't see what you wrote. Let's see. Let's see. Let me see what you wrote. Trying to see what you wrote. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the lesson tonight. Um, we're trying to do our thing. We're trying to get better at just making everything look better on the channel. And so thank you for tuning in, man. Don't forget, please subscribe, join channel membership for that exclusive content. If you haven't checked out Exploring the Latin Breakdown, the docu-series parts 1 and 2, please go check that out. If you haven't checked out the Latin Breakdown, Hip Hop's Latino Connection, please go check that out. And check out some of the other stuff that we got going on the channel. Remember, every Tuesday night, we do a Bible study for the culture called Underground Sessions. We're in the Gospel of John. Right now, we're going through that whole book just to look at the life of Jesus through the eyes of the Apostle John. Some real dope, deep information in there. But thank you so much again. Thank you for everyone tuning in. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. Grace and peace. We'll talk to you in the next episode. One love.